Bill, you do so much. You are the transition coach. And that's why we have you on here today to share with the influence trainer community all about transitions, adapting, dealing with disruption in the marketplace. And you have a wonderful statement for the Strong Bridge Group. Why don't you go ahead and share that with us?
Yeah, we like to suggest and say that let us be your strong bridge from where you are to where you want to be. So whatever your present state, we want to help you achieve your desired future state.
Hey, my name is Drew, and I've had the opportunity to be connected with highly influential people throughout my career. I've also spent countless hours studying the activities, actions, and qualities of influential people. My goal with this channel is to help you increase your influence in the workplace. Stay to the end because I have a free assessment where you can measure your influence, and I'll tell you how to get that at the end of the video.
And I am here with the founder and CEO of the Strong Bridge Group, Bill Leckie. And Bill is the author of 3 books. You're a blogger, a sought-after speaker with a strong desire to equip, encourage, and empower people. The Strong Bridge Group exists to equip, train, and coach people, organizations, and businesses to succeed and thrive as they navigate the transitional seasons and cycles of change in their life or business. That's fantastic. That's great. Well, let's jump right into it because I know people are wondering, they're clicking on here, they found the video, they're in transition, they're going, what do you mean by transition? Let's just jump right into it. How would you define transition? How have you defined transition in your books and the blogs that you have?
Well, basically, transition is something has occurred, either a change, a decision has been made, whether you made it or someone else, and it's introduced a new normal that we now have to adjust to. So in business, the word transition might be substituted with the word disruption. Something changes in the market, something changes with the relevance of our product, and now we have to adjust to it. So we have to adapt. So transition, really change is kind of an event. Transition is our adjustment to that event so that it becomes our new normal, so that we can function. So there's that period or space in time. Often in business, they would look at the lag time that occurs in their production. They introduced a new process, and they know there's going to be a lag before their production kicks up again as people learn the new process and as they go through. So that is also a transition. As people, we experience transitions in a lot of ways. We might experience them through a reduction in force. Suddenly someone has decided our position is no longer needed. We are now in a transitional season trying to find new employment. What do I do now? So forth. To simplify it, something has occurred. I now have to adjust to it and then find my new normal.
I love that. I love that. And you mentioned a few different terms there: transition, disruption. I think that word disruption really captures the feeling you get when it's done to you, right?
For sure.
and it's a transition, but it's also this, hey, I didn't pick this, I didn't choose this. And then that ability to adapt. And for everyone who's on my channel, you might be asking, what does transition or disruption or adapting have to do with influence? And in my influence assessment that I have in the show notes below, adaptability is one of the qualities of an influential person. If you want to continue to increase your influence in the workplace as a professional, you're going to encounter transitions. You're going to encounter disruption. You're going to encounter changes that you had input on and ones that you did not. And so you're going to have to be able to adapt to that change. And real quick, how I define adaptability is, adaptable is you do not get stuck and are able to quickly change tactics. You're able to change in that moment. And I know that you have so much tremendous content on strategies and tactics for transition, Bill. And so what I like to do is really start out with the strategies for transition. So can you share maybe some transition strategies with us?
Yeah, as on a personal level, even if business is making a change, every individual in that company or organization or team is going to have to make a transition also. So it's very personal. as well as organizational. And I think in the words of disruption, when we think about that, where it feels like something's being done to us, I think it's important for businesses, but also for individuals to process that emotion. Because if you do not process that emotion is going to weigh in on our attitude and our perspective towards this change. And, I like to tell people, someone else's choice may have initiated this, but it will be your choices that shape your experience in this. And so it's real important for us, I think, to take some time, just process through, especially if there's that sense of, why is this happening to me? Why did they do this? And maybe we're not sure. It doesn't have to be a lengthy process, but if we don't at least address a little bit of that, and that can happen through a lot of ways, journaling, maybe just get your thoughts out on a piece of paper, whatever, group, come together, talk it out. If you're a leadership team in an organization, be sure you process the emotion, because those emotions are going to ride on your experience. So a good first step is to acknowledge, hey, we're not being picked on. We've not been singled out. This happens. We've chosen to be in business. We are people living in this world, and these things happen. So the quicker we can eliminate those emotional elements of I'm being picked on, why me, all that, get that out of the way, because this is a part of doing business in the marketplace at this time. There are changes coming at a rapid pace, and the organizations and individuals who can adapt and be agile and quickly make the necessary shifts and changes, those are the people who actually begin to dominate the marketplace.
That's great. So, okay, so now I've dealt with it, and I've dealt with this change. What's my next step? I've dealt with the emotions of transition. What's that next step, or what would you kind of share with people after that?
Yeah. In fact, I might encapsulate it this way, and I call this kind of a mind shift that we need towards transition. And we, instead of seeing it as something to be avoided, recognize that it can be something that when we embrace it, it actually benefits us. And so the whole friend or foe element there, that mind shift needs to occur. If I view transition as something that's potentially beneficial, that affects the way I go into it. If I view it as something that has no benefit, that affects the way I go into it. So let me just sum it up in 3 statements. The first one is accept the certainty of transition. It's going to happen. It's the sooner we're able to accept that it's unavoidable and that it is going to occur, that helps us make the mind shift that I was talking about, that we're not being picked on or singled out. It helps us deal with the emotion. So just accept the certainty of it. It's going to occur. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So we can prepare for that and be ready. The second is embrace the purpose that these things serve. Anytime we can assign purpose to something, it's hugely beneficial to us in how we approach and go through it. When we don't understand the purpose of something, that's very frustrating and very can be very destructive to the culture of a company or an organization or a team. So embracing the purpose, and let me just say this, the purpose is that it's going to show you things that won't work so that you can come up with things that will work. So innovation is a part of this. And when we recognize one of the benefits of these disruptions when they occur, we get to identify things that will no longer work.
Yeah.
And move them aside. And then we can begin to brainstorm and come up with new ways that will work.
Yeah.
So instead of getting trapped in the, oh my gosh, what we're doing will no longer work, we make the move right into understanding part of the purpose of this is to release our creativity, spark innovation, and help us come up with new solutions for the landscape we're facing.
That's so good.
So that's the second
problem has an opportunity, right?
Absolutely. And we can look at this as an obstacle, or we can see it as an opportunity. And, really in the marketplace, especially, disruptions are an opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be challenges. It doesn't mean there won't be obstacles. But the fact that there are obstacles and challenges, they don't negate the validity of the opportunity. What they will do is reveal how committed we are to seizing that opportunity.
Wow.
And this is why businesses sometimes don't make the turn. They're not able to stay relevant in the marketplace because the obstacle is what they're focused on and aren't able to see their way around it, or they don't see the opportunity as valuable enough to go through the pain the obstacle might present. Companies that are going to flourish are going to have a different mindset.
Yeah, maybe even pride can get in the way of
Oh,
seeing the opportunity.
absolutely.
You go, yeah, right. We're not going to be disrupted. We've been around, forever. You think about the horse and buggy, and then the car coming on the scene, and
Yep.
I've heard a story, of a company that just as the car was coming on the scene, they came up with a brand new buggy, right? That it was like this innovative buggy. Well, you innovated in the wrong way, right?
Yeah. It
Old
doesn't matter how great
technology.
the buggy is if no one's using buggies anymore.
Exactly.
It's the same thing that happened with companies like Kodak and companies like Blockbuster. They saw what was happening in the marketplace and ignored it
Mm,
and felt they were bigger. I mean, you would think of all people, Kodak would have jumped on the digital imaging market, but they did not. They saw it as a fad that it would pass, and now they're out of business. Blockbuster, same thing.
mhm.
You can't find those stores anymore because things went digital on them, which one of the things that's happening in our marketplace is digital disruption.
Yeah.
It's people using the internet and apps and so forth to do things that they used to have to go to a store or to a brick and mortar location to do. So this is a very real thing. And we have examples of people who, out of pride or hubris, whatever we want to say, sometimes just ignorance,
Yeah.
just do not consider something is going to matter, and they undervalue the opportunity. And as a result, they're not positioned to take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah. I think what people need to understand as well is the strategies that you're sharing today. We come up with new terms for transition, digital disruption, the taxi to Uber, the movie theaters, Netflix, the hotel to the Airbnb. But it's been happening since the beginning of time. There have been transitions, there have been changes,
Yes.
there have been people who have had to make adjustments along the way. And so the strategies that you're sharing, it doesn't matter what new name we come up with the transitions moving forward, digital disruption or something else. These strategies will help you accept it, have a mindset to find the purpose behind it, find the opportunities that are there, and then make the necessary changes to leverage it and take advantage of it. So
Absolutely.
I
Well,
think
and the third statement there
yeah,
that I would make is simply this: you can minimize the duration of it, right? So, like you can't control all aspects of timelines, but as all people in business know, when you have a change initiative of any kind, there's a lag in production you have to address. Well, the better prepared you are and the better prepared your people are to embrace needed change and make those transitions, you actually shrink the amount of time that productivity is negatively affected. So
mm,
you can reduce the lag time. This is one of the things that the longer it takes us to accept it and embrace it and move on with it, then the longer it's going to take for us to really see any advantage to having made the change. The sooner we do it, the sooner we're through it. Okay, that's the phrase I'll throw out there. So the sooner you do it, the sooner you're through it. And so the more prepared we are, and the more we've accepted the certainty of this, and we've begun to prepare, and we've learned how to embrace that there is a positive purpose that can be served, so that we engage the process necessary. Well, that's the sooner we do it, the sooner we're through it. That's how we minimize the duration of it.
that's powerful. So and you've hinted all around this, you've talked around this, but just for the listeners to really grab hold of this. Okay, transitions in business are inevitable, but why is it a problem if your employees uh, struggle with transition? Why would that be a problem for the company? What are some of the outworkings? What happens when your team is not equipped with the strategies you just shared to handle transition in a healthy way?
Well, the difficulty is it doesn't matter if the owner of the organization, team, or the leader of the team or the company gets it. If the people that he relies on to make things happen don't get it, it's not happening. We can all probably think of different failed change initiatives that have attempted to be launched, and there are a lot of things that can cause that. But communication is one of the big ones, and how we communicate. Here's what I've discovered about transitions, how we deal with disruptions. It really has a lot to do with culture that we've developed and we've built. But I see transition as a leadership issue. It is the responsibility of leadership to prepare their people and give them what they need to be able to fulfill what we expect of them. So if we expect our workforce to be able to adapt, be innovative and creative, then it's on us to be sure that we have provided them with the resources, the training, and the skill sets necessary. Otherwise, it becomes an unrealistic expectation, which is going to lead to an unmet expectation, which is really the root of all human conflict, if you think about it. So expectations fall in two categories for me that make them fail, or where they become unmet. Unrealistic ones, where we're expecting something that people aren't able to do, and unspoken ones, the ones we've not actually communicated to anyone that we have the expectation. So if I'm the leader of a business, company, organization, or a team, and I expect my team to be able to adapt, and I expect them to understand how to innovate and be creative and solve this problem of this disruption, well, then I better be sure that I'm providing them with all that they need to know those things. I should not assume they automatically know how. I should provide them with the kind of training and instruction and skill set and resources that allow them to do that.
Yeah.
Companies who handle these things well spend time and budget. Let's be honest, Drew. Most of our experiences in transition have been shaped by whoever was leading us through it.
That's good. And folks that are watching my channel, they're COOs, they're managers, they're sales team leaders. They have teams of people, and I hope you captured that it's your responsibility as the leader. You might be, hey, you've got your influence assessment, you're marking high on adaptability, you get it, you can adapt to change, you've always been good at it, or maybe you've worked on it over time and you've got it. But if your team doesn't, that's really your responsibility as the leader to influence your team and bring the resources around them so that they can better adapt to the changes that are in the marketplace, whether they continue to transition with you or transition outside of your organization. Equip them with these skills, and you can do that by bringing Bill in. I was part of an organization years ago that brought Bill in. That's how we first met. They brought Bill in. We were in a season of transition, and they said, hey, this guy is the expert on transition. We want to bring him in to speak to our team and to do a training. And it can be a one-off training. It could be a series of trainings to help your team transition through this change. Or if you say, you know what, this budget year, we don't have budget for it. This quarter, we don't have budget for it. Take this interview and then the links that Bill has for his own social media channels, and begin to show this content to your team in your meetings so that they can begin to understand the principles of transition and how to better understand, have some strategies, have some tactics we're going to talk about in a minute of how to handle those transitions. It's so powerful. So make sure that you reach out to Bill and get a hold of him, get that contact information, and bring him in to your organization. Okay, I want to ask you. So this is a little role playing, and let's say that I am one of your sales team members, Bill, and you have just changed my territory. My territory got smaller. This is the second time in 2 years it's gotten smaller. The company's growing, the area's growing. Hey, we're in DFW. like buildings are going up, so it would make sense in a way that territories would kind of change, but I'm struggling with it. You cut my territory down. I'm really wondering, what's my place in this organization? Do you value me? And where do I go from here? How do you, as the leader who understands transition, how do you kind of walk me through that conversation?
Well, I think that conversation is a great word, because at the heart of leading anyone through a transitional season is communication. And that communication needs to be three things. It needs to be honest, clear, and often. When we do not communicate honestly and clearly and often enough, then people fill blanks in their mind. So the struggle that you say that someone might be having, it's usually because they don't have information. So they're left to plug in the information themselves.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we often come up with wrong answers when we don't even know all of the questions and we don't have all the information. So one of the things that I think is important is that it's my responsibility, if I'm the one overseeing you, to communicate very clearly with you and as honestly as I can and as often as is necessary why this change is happening.
Mm.
Uh, if you've ever had a dialogue with a toddler who loves to just throw the word why back at you every time you answer something, and this can go on ad nauseum, most of us have probably had this experience. We usually think that that's some kind of defiance, but really I believe it's rooted in a deep-seated human need to understand purpose.
Yeah.
And so as a leader, I need to be able to articulate why. If it's related to previous performance, I need that person to know that. Maybe I made this change because this person seems to break into new territory and expand it better than anyone else on the team. And if that's the case, then I need to be sure they know that, so that they have the understanding of why. If the individual is not actually measuring up to the performance quotas that we've set for them, and we've reduced their territory, that can sound punitive, but as good leaders, it should not be punitive. It should be a setup to help them do better. One of the things that does happen in organizations is that we don't have hard conversations with people, and we don't clearly communicate what's expected. Sometimes we just put people either on a PIP or we do punitive things. And we don't always realize how negatively that impacts individuals. So if you, Drew, are struggling and I'm your manager, my job is to do everything I can to make you successful. This is that mind shift that has to occur when we move from being a top performer to being a leader. When we move from being a top performer in an area to being a manager over people, there is a shift that has to happen in our brain. This is no longer about my performance. This is about making sure that my team has everything they need to succeed. Yeah. So that driving my thought process, it's important that I let that person know, hey, we're reducing it, giving you a better chance of hitting your numbers. We want you to succeed. And then maybe even say, if there is a problem, we want to involve you in some additional training, some additional coaching. We've actually reached out to a coach in this area. We're going to make sure you have some time with them. We want you to succeed. When you succeed, we all succeed. That is the correct tack and process. Now, if the person is just going to wash out, and this is a stalling technique that we're using, we need to still communicate as honestly and clearly as we can, and as often as is necessary, because all it takes is that one person turning toxic because they don't understand, they're being left in the dark, they're just left to fill in the blanks. That is infectious, and they could actually affect the entire sales team. And so you need to be aware of that as a manager. But again, I would just back up and say, clear communication. Yeah. Make sure you answer that fundamental question, why? Because they're asking it. And until they get some sort of resolve to that, they're going to struggle and they're going to have a hard time. And they're going to start asking people other than the ones qualified to answer it. And they'll speculate, and then it'll just snowball.
Yeah, wow, that is fantastic. Communication, I mean, it's so important. I do coaching and training around communication, and it's such a need. Even LinkedIn did a survey on their platform of the number one skills gap in the marketplace, and communication was the number one gap that organizations, and it's interpersonal communication. It's the ability to have those tough conversations as a leader. As a sales team member, go to your employer, go to your manager, and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this transition," not in an emotional way, but say, "Hey, I'm
Right.
struggling with this. I don't understand why this is happening," and try to initiate that conversation and get some clarity around it, because it doesn't help going around gossiping and airing out your frustrations to everybody else but the only person that can do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I
communication.
just I just recently had a conversation with one of my coaching clients, as an executive out of Minnesota, that was working through how to that communication element of, I'm trying to find a balance between candor
Mm,
and caring when
yeah.
I do my communicating. And my response was, don't see those two things as two six guns on your hip that you have to decide when you walk into a meeting which one to use.
Yeah.
You need to see them as two sides of the same thing.
Yeah.
All true caring has elements of clarity. It's the most unkind thing we can do to someone is be unclear. And so that's important. And also, when we are being very straightforward and we have to use candor, that should always be tempered with care.
Yeah.
And so if I need to be straightforward, I've needed to have done a good job of helping you understand that I care about you, the company cares about you, uh, and what our motives are.
Now, I think one of the best books I've read on finding that balance between candor and caring is Necessary Endings by Dr.
Yes.
Henry Cloud. And yeah, just understanding, I'll put a link in the description below, but it's a great book just on understanding, um, you know, it's important to have those tough conversations. If someone, you talked about clarity a lot, if someone is not hitting the mark, they deserve to know that. That's not being mean, that's actually informing them. So that how can they get better if they don't know that they're not performing uh, properly? So it's very important that you have those conversations and help a person better understand so they can improve in their life. And
Well, that plays right into what I find are the four keys to successful and sustainable change.
okay.
What I present to people on this is, the first key is awareness. And so, as you said, if people do not know that they're not meeting the performance requirements, it's ridiculous for us to expect them to do better.
Yeah.
So awareness is a key, and there are levels of awareness, right? So there's the simple recognition of a need, but then there is a deeper where we actually begin to understand why this change matters. And that actually leads us to what I believe is one of the highest levels of awareness, and that is, it creates a desire for
Mm,
us to make the change.
mm,
So awareness is the first key to successful and sustainable change. Now, once that happens, the second key is acceptance. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, but acceptance of responsibility for the change. So if I've communicated clearly and my employee, team member, whatever, now has a full awareness, and I've helped them come through that to where they now have a desire to change, they now have to own the responsibility for taking those steps to get better. So that's a key. So let me just take it out of that context. If I decide that I want to start a walking regimen because it's good for my health, and I say, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm only going to do it if my spouse can go with me,
mm.
I've already undermined my success, because invariably our schedules aren't going to mesh.
Yeah.
She's not going to be able to go with me. And so I have an out.
Yeah.
I have to accept and own the responsibility for it.
That's so
And
good.
basically
Man, wow.
say, I'm going to start this walking regimen because I own the need for this change. Now, if my spouse can go with me, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
But if they can't, I'm going anyway. That's owning it. That's taking responsibility for it. So we want our team members, our employees, to own the responsibility for making change, and not project it onto other people. We have to own it. So we accept that responsibility. The third thing that really comes into it, the third key component to successful and sustainable change, is ability. Just because we want to make a change doesn't mean our team has the ability to make the
Oh, yeah.
change. They might need training. They might need a new skill set. They might need more information. They might need practice.
Yeah.
You know, there may be some emotional, mental blocks that they are going to encounter that will cause them to be unable to make this change. This really happens in sales forces when we change the approach or methodology to how we're going to sell. So you might have people on your team who are used to product-based selling, and you're making the change to client-based selling. Now it's about, what are our clients' needs, not what are our products, which one do you want?
Yeah.
Not everybody can make that mental shift. So we have to recognize that ability is a key. If I told you, Drew, hey, I want to be a marathon runner. Once you finish laughing about that, because you know me, you would recognize I don't have the ability to be a marathon runner. I'm going to have to make a series of other changes first before I can even contemplate that possibility, right? So that's key. And as leaders, we need to be aware of all of these things I'm mentioning: awareness, acceptance, ability. The fourth thing is action. And when I say that, you probably immediately have the response, duh. Of course, if you don't act, things don't change. But I mean more than just the thought of action. I mean having a strategic plan that you can act upon, actionable steps that can be followed, a process that can be engaged in over time, because that's how change actually occurs. I didn't go to bed one night, my ideal weight, and woke up the next morning obese. That's not how things happen. I made a series of choices over a process of time that led me to my present state. The only way I can get to my desired future state of getting back to an ideal weight is the same way. I'm going to have to make choices on a daily basis over a process of time. So
You're getting way too
action,
personal here today, Bill.
I know, right? Not you, me. We're talking about me here, right?
Oh,
Does that make
sure.
you feel
Yeah.
better?
It's not you. It's me. Yeah.
The
Exactly.
reality, the reality, Art, is that change, transition, these are not necessarily organizational issues. These are human issues.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason this topic is something that I'm passionate about is because it affects every area of life and every individual. It's something we all deal with. And the barriers that we have to overcome, the challenges that we face, they're all human challenges. And when we're in leadership of a business, company, organization, or team, sometimes we forget the human element. We get so caught up in the processes, the steps, what we're doing, our product, the charts, the numbers. We forget that all of that is contingent on the human element.
Yeah.
And so we're not leading machines. Machines don't need led. We're leading people, and people need leadership.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, hey, let's put a bow on this. You've shared so much with us, but is there anything else that you would like to share with us on how to manage change in an organization? I mean, you're the expert. I'm asking some questions that are interesting to me, but anything else that we missed that you want to share that maybe you're seeing out in the marketplace right now, or that comes to mind?
Well, I think one element that is happening on some nonprofit organizations that I work with, as well as companies, and that is these legacy transitions that are occurring. So someone founded the company or they started the organization, but now they've moved on in time. They either aren't physically able anymore, or they're tired, or they just want to do something different, or this happens often. What if someone has come in and changed the C-suite on your company? There's a new CEO who's been brought in. How do you adjust to that? So I think that it's easy for us to overthink some of these elements, but some of the basic things that I just have already shared with you, they all apply. As a person, as an individual, I have a new leader. Okay, I have to adapt. I may not have chosen this leader. Maybe let's bring this down even smaller. I have a new manager over my team. They're different than my old manager. A change has been made. I may have had nothing to do with it. I may not have picked them, but I still have to transition so that we can work together. So all of these things we talked about earlier, they all apply. They all apply as an individual, as well as maybe I'm the manager who's come in. I'm the new guy. I'm making a new direction for the company or the team, whatever it is. It's incumbent on leaders to accept the responsibility for transitions. We tend to put the responsibility on the people that we want to now lead. That's backwards. The onus, the responsibility is on the leader to help people make this transition and make it successful. So when we recognize that, this is a big deal. I watch this play out in nonprofits often. And business, and it rarely goes well. And one of the reasons is because, so it's issued as an edict, and people just now have to cope with it. What I want people to understand is that if I am coming in as the new CEO, if I'm the new COO, if I'm the new manager, if I'm the new lead of this team, the responsibility for seeing this transition go well, it's mine. It's mine.
Yeah.
And that's something that is often lacking. We project that responsibility, say, hey, you just need to be a good team member, just get on board, this, that, and the other. Well, you can do that. And here's what you wind up with. You get compliance, but you don't get buy-in.
Yeah.
Now, if you are the guy who's running this or the gal who's in charge, would you rather have compliance or buy-in? Well, compliance is based on external threat or pressure. Hey, get with the program. Suck it up, buttercup. Here we go. That kind of stuff, you can get compliance, but the moment there's an ease up of the threat or pressure, people will go back and revert to what is familiar and comfortable. Buy-in is when they look at you and say, I believe in this. I hear you. I want the same thing. I'm in. I'm going to do everything I can to make this work.
Yeah.
Compliance sounds like this. If I have to. Buy-in is I want to.
Yeah.
And obviously, with any change that's going on in an organization, company, business, or team, buy-in is what's going to bring you the highest ROI.
Yeah.
Compliance, not so much.
That's great. So I really want people to understand in a very practical way how to best use your services. So, I can think of a couple situations. You talked about legacy transition, and maybe there's a son taking over his father's business. There's a transition there. There probably needs to be some coaching. That might be an entrepreneur situation. There's an organization that they've got a new COO and new CEO over the past few years. There's been a lot of disruption. They need to bring you in for some training, but also maybe make you available to the entire team for coaching as needed with people as things come up. What other ways do people utilize you in their organizations?
Well, one of the ways, I've been a keynote speaker for my entire adult life. And sometimes an easy way to at least introduce people to these concepts is to actually just say, would you come speak to our team? Would you just come in and address either our sales team, or would you come in and speak to our company-wide function or our organization? Or I just returned home this weekend from an organization in Southeast Texas who said, we want you to come in and talk to us about transition and how we can manage and cope with these things more effectively with our leaders and our staff. And so that's one way. You can just say, hey, would you come in? Sometimes the subject is so either vague or it's perceived as negative, people don't talk about it. So to hear someone else come in and share, hey, here, this is doable. It's not only doable, this is going to benefit you the more you learn to do this, rather than seeing this as, hey, I've said that transitions are unavoidable, but they don't have to be unbearable. In fact, with the right coaching and training, they become profitable and beneficial. And so to hear that side of it can often open the door for continued training, specific training. Maybe you'd say, hey, I've got 4 executives under me. I want them to have this coaching, this training, and then schedule times where we talk more specifically about what their issues are, what their resistance levels are, what their particular blocks regarding these changes are, and help them move past it. So the individual coaching is certainly there. Often even just talking with the executives, the CEO, the COO themselves need some help in coaching to help them become better communicators, helping them to get buy-in in a more successful way. Maybe they need some of that input, understanding this process. What I'm seeing is a trend is that change management is becoming something everyone talks about, and it's throughout business, but it's primarily focused on process change management, not people change management. And the big issue is that your change management's really just glorified project management. It's not really getting to the heart of what gets buy-in and therefore produces a greater return on investment. And so sometimes executives need help and coaching to become better at the people side of change management, understanding how to communicate. What are the questions that need to be asked? And I'll just throw this in. Here's a little bonus. Here's 4 questions that matter if you're going to make a change. All right. You ready for this? Yeah. 4 questions. Here they are. Here's the first one. Why are we making this change? And I'll just give a little addendum to that. Why are we making this change now? People are going to be thinking about it. You need to be able to have, as a leader, a clear and compelling answer to that question, why? That's significant. Here's the second question that matters, and that is, who is going to be the sponsor of this change? In other words, who's going to communicate? Who's going to take the lead on how we communicate out through our workforce why we're doing this? Are they believable? Are they credible? Do people tend to respect them? Are they someone that is going to be listened to? So who's going to sponsor that change? That's the second question. Here's the third one. Who's going to be most impacted by this change? Is it a department? Is it a team? Is it company-wide? If so, we need to know who's being impacted, because even though the message of why might be the same, how we say it to our finance department might be different than how we say it to our shipping department. And here's why. Until something matters to us personally, we will not change. So what matters to your finance department may be different than what matters to your shipping department. So how you communicate is a big deal. So you need to know who's being impacted. Here's the fourth question. It sounds like an obvious one, but it's important, and so many people forget it. What resources are going to be necessary to make this change?
Yeah.
Whether it's training, information, coaching, money, whatever it is, to know that up front is extremely important when you're going to introduce a change initiative. I'll tell you this, if you'll answer those 4 questions, give them thought and answer them well, you're going to have a lot of success with your change initiatives.
That's fantastic. That's great, Bill. And I'm going to have all of your contact information in the description below, just under the show notes, so they can go to your website. They can get your book. They can follow you on social media, connect with you on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram. We'll have all those links for you below. Make sure you follow Bill. And every Tuesday, right, you've got a new video that comes out. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that you have those available for you. If you've got something to say, something to sell, or something significant to do, you've got to increase your influence. That's what this channel is all about. And adapting to change, transitioning well, and processing disruption in your organization is part of increasing your influence. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Bill, I want to thank you so much for letting me interview you today. And we will talk to all of you later. And remember, increase your influence, realize your dream.
If you found value from this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. To receive the free influence assessment, simply click on the link below that says Influence Assessment. If you have any questions or comments about influence, please comment below and I will look forward to connecting with you. Always remember, increase your influence, realize your dream.